Tonight, pivotal talks begin between Israel and Hamas. Donald Trump demanded an end to Israeli bombings, but dozens of people have been killed in the past 48 hours. We'll hear from two women, one in a kibbutz in Israel, another across the border in Gaza, both grieving for all they've lost since October the 7th.
These are the two beds, and this is hurting the heart to see that that is what is left from a couple that's been living together for over 60 years.
October 7 was just one day, but for us, it has felt like living through hundreds of October 7s.
Detained, then deported, I'll speak to one of the more than 100 activists who tried to sail aid into Gaza about his experience in an Israeli prison. In Afghanistan, we witnessed the battle to keep children alive during an unprecedented hunger crisis. We'll speak live to our correspondent in Kabul. Plus, as yet another French Prime Minister resigns, can Emmanuel Macron save his legacy and his presidency? That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. Live from Jerusalem, I'm Yalda Hakim. It's been 2 years, give or take a few hours, since the first Hamas militants drove through a hole in an Israeli border fence and unleashed a brutal attack that changed this region forever. Nearly 1,200 people died that day. More than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed. Today, after another intervention from Donald Trump, negotiators for Israel and Hamas began indirect talks in Cairo. Donald Trump has urged both sides to act fast, but it's not that simple. Will Hamas really lay down arms and play no part in governing Gaza? And will Israel agree to withdraw fully from the Strip? The two men leading the talks will determine how long this process takes. For Israel, senior government official Ron Dermer, described as Benjamin Netanyahu's brain. And for Hamas, Khalil al-Hayya, a senior official who survived Israel's airstrike on Doha last month. And as they talk through intermediaries in Gaza and in Israel, there are so many people hoping for hostages to be returned, waiting for the airstrikes and the fighting to end. Tonight, we hear from two women, Rita and Sabah, about how that day 2 years ago changed their lives forever. Our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, has our first report.
He would love to speak to you. He would love to hear your stories. He would tell his stories. It's a big sorrow in my heart that Grandpa Oded Lifshitz has to end his life by being kidnapped and murdered by terror in Gaza. And the whole kibbutz is waking up every morning to the 7th of October. This is Oded Lifshitz's house. My father-in-law's house.
For Rita Lifshitz, the memories still ring so loudly. Her beloved father-in-law, Oded, lived here on Kibbutz Nir Oz. He was taken hostage on October 7th and held in Gaza, the land you can see from his window. This small kibbutz was overrun. More than 500 fighters came here. Oded and his wife, Yocheved, hid in their bomb shelter.
Our bomb shelter rooms are made for rockets, not for terror. They shot. He's holding the handle because there is no lock. You're holding the handle to one side. Hamas is trying to open it to the other side. They couldn't. They shot his hand, and here you can see the bullets. It's emotionally difficult to see what is left from Grandma and Grandpa, my parents-in-law. These are the two beds, and this is hurting the heart to see that that is what is left from a couple that's been living together for over 60 years.
Yocheved was released after 16 days. Oded's body was returned earlier this year. More than a quarter of the people in this kibbutz were either killed or taken hostage, their fates marked with flags.
I call this road the death road because there is flags in each house People were murdered. You have the black flag. You have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
We meet Nathan, who survived because the attackers couldn't find his front door. He's 88 years old and moved back here as soon as he could after October the 7th. Are you frightened? Are you...
I am afraid? No.
Why? I mean, Hamas has attacked here. There is war there.
It was an incident. The military was not here. It was an incident. The government make a mistake. The army make mistake. But this is the army, and this is my house, and I'm living here.
All these flags, black flags, yellow flags. Can you tell me how sad you feel about these flags?
Look, they are friends of me. I live them all their life here, in my life. The history of my road.
The history of your life.
The history of my life, yes.
Rita was out of the kibbutz when the attackers arrived. When she came home, she was met by devastation.
They will not come back to the kibbutz.
This is her best friend's home. Itzhak was shot, taken hostage, and later died. His cat is still here. We're told he moves between the house and the graveyard where Itzhak is buried. Unusually, this house wasn't burnt on October the 7th, so you can really see the violence of these attacks. Just take a look at the walls over here. They are strewn with bullet holes, some of them very, very deep. There's even a bullet been fired into the television here and one into the microwave oven. You can see all the signs of horrific violence, and yet around us also all the signs of normal life: cooking oil, spices, bottles of wine.
If you were alone holding the handle.
At the back of the home, the strong room where Itzhak took shelter. His blood is still on the floor and on the walls. Time is standing still here. Next door, the dusty toys of the Bibash family. Small children who were taken hostage along with their parents. Their father came back alive. The children and their mother came back dead. The people in this kibbutz lived in the shadow of Gaza. It is there, always on the horizon. This is the view going the other way. The tents are in Gaza, the chimneys are in Israel. Across Gaza, more than 67,000 people have been killed since the October 7th attacks. A UN commission has described the war as a genocide. Saba used to live just over the border from Rita's kibbutz, but she's had to move 13 times since the war began. Saba once lived in a grand house with the trappings of wealth and success. But the last time she saw her home, it had just been bombed.
Personally, I long to go back to the ruins of my house, to sit among the rubble, simply to be there. Even that would be better than this life. At least then I might find a little peace.
But more recently came news. Her home had been targeted once more, and since these photos were taken, it's been targeted again.
Just imagine losing your home. When they told me what had happened to mine, I spent nearly 10 days doing nothing but crying. It truly feels like your very soul is torn away when you lose your home. Your spirit leaves you.
For Saba, this war is not just about what happened on October the 7th, not even about Hamas. It's about generations of struggle and anger, about feeling that Israel is oppressing the Palestinian people.
We have lived our entire lives in these chains. The land is ours, our homeland. It was never given to us as a gift, just carried forward, generation after generation. That's why we can't imagine giving it up.
This was Saba before the war, smiling, enjoying life. But the last 2 years have taken a toll.
We are exhausted, broken by what has been done to us. October 7 was just one day, but for us, it has felt like living through hundreds of October 7ths.
In wars, people suffer. Not just those who are killed and injured, but those who shoulder the burden of misery. In Gaza and in Israel, the scars caused by October the 7th run deep, and who knows if they will ever truly heal. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
We'll be speaking to Adam in a moment, but as you can hear there from that piece, the memories of that day are still raw, especially for the families of those killed. Ruby Chen's 19-year-old son, Itai, was serving with the IDF when his tank brigade was attacked. His body is still believed to be in Gaza. I spoke to Ruby about why this moment in the conflict feels so different. Thank you so much for joining us. I see the number on your... Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's something that started way back when it was still 2 digits. It's a symbol of how many days since the last time I spoke to my son. And each day we wake up and we change the number. And when we got to the 100th day, you know, we were like in shock. 3 digits, like no way that we got here. Like all of us were like, we can't believe we got to 100. And no one fathomed that we would get to 200.
Throughout this process, have you had much contact with Benjamin Netanyahu, Ron Dermer, some of the people within the government? Have they been able to offer you the kind of support that you and the other hostage families have needed?
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic to talk about. I also have the ability to do a comparison because as a U.S. citizen, we were immediately, there was an envelope of support. The State Department has a function called SPIHA, Special President Envoy for Hostage Affairs. So it's an existing function, so they immediately, were able to provide us the support that we were looking for. I've been to Washington dozens of times over the last 2 years. We always get an invitation inside of the White House. If it is not, that official, then it's another official. But when it comes to the Prime Minister and Ron Dermer, just say for a fact, I've been asking a one-on-one meeting with either of them the last 11 months. I have not gotten a reply yet.
Do you think they're serious this time, that they do want to finalize this conflict?
I think they've always wanted to find a way to get the hostages out. And I do think that the Prime Minister understands the magnitude of this impacting his legacy, which is, where he is in his political career. But Henry Kissinger once said 50 years ago that the State of Israel does not have a foreign policy, only a domestic policy, which is to say that there's a lot of influence of the political aspects. And for the love of God, I don't understand how this topic could be something that is utilized for political components. And it's unfortunate that the conversation in the public here in Israel has gone back to us and them. It's instead of us, it's again creating that division.
What is the sort of mood and feeling now in the coming days, knowing that negotiations are taking place currently in Sharm el-Sheikh?
I think that, we saw the initial Israeli team leave today. We understand the negotiations that are more technical at the moment, so it feels different. But, we need to make sure that everyone is eyes on the ball and remember that what comes out first is the 48 hostages. And then we could talk about all the implementation questions. Hopefully that, brings also an end to the suffering of the people in Gaza that have been used as human shields for over 2 years. I do not think that, we are in some sort of competition. Who is in more pain? I think that we, at the end, the normal people, the simple people, we are collateral damage for politicians. Just, let us have our peace and get to a place where there's no more killing.
Ruby, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and God bless.
That was Ruby Chen, the father of Itai Chen, speaking with me there a little earlier. Well, today, Israel deported 171 activists detained on board an aid flotilla trying to get supplies to Gaza. The 40 boats made global headlines last week when IDF soldiers climbed on board and detained them. Israel claimed the mission was violating a lawful blockade and was designed to provoke. Swedish activist Greta Thunberg and others were cheered as they emerged at Athens airport after being deported. This is what she had to say. Have a listen.
I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment, trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes.
That was Swedish activist Greta Thunberg there. Well, let's bring in Kieran Andreou, who is a British-Palestinian journalist who's also on board the flotilla, and he joins me live now. Thank you so much, Kieran, for joining us here on the programme. You were detained. Just talk us through what happened, because we know, there was a convoy of about 42 of these vessels, about 500 people. It was perhaps one of the largest we've ever seen. And then, of course, we saw and heard that the IDF had boarded the flotilla. And then just talk me through what happened to you and those who were with you.
Yeah, so as you say, we were boarded. We were intercepted in international waters. My boat was about 70 nautical miles from the coast of Gaza. So for those who don't know, 12 nautical miles from the coast counts as territorial waters. 70 nautical miles, of course, very far outside of territorial waters. So it was an illegal interception. We were then taken to the port of Ashdod in Israel. We were dragged off the boats. We were thrown to the floor. We were forced to to rest on our knees, facing downwards, with our hands tied behind our backs with cable ties. This went on for some people for as long as 6 hours. I was there for about 2.5 hours. One by one, we were kind of called into a processing centre at the port of Ashdod. I was called in, as I say, about 2.5 hours in. I went in, I was fast-tracked through various systems, and then I had my hands tied again, taken onto a bus and driven 2 hours away from the processing centre to the Negev Desert. And I only found out I was in the Negev Desert when the British Consular General came to visit the day after we'd been illegally imprisoned in the Negev Desert. And I said to him, "Where are we?" And he explained that we were indeed in the Negev Desert, in a prison complex that Israel built originally to torture Palestinian inmates. So, and then when we were there, the experience was utterly parlous. I mean, several tenets of international humanitarian law were violated. Several principles of the Geneva Convention were violated. We were denied water. As I say, it was in the middle of a desert, so it was very, very hot. Small corrugated cells, makeshift cells, absorbed a lot of heat. We were denied water in that context. It was 10 people to a cell. We had to drink out of a tap in the toilets that produced feculent water infected with fecal matter, brown water. And when we pointed this out to the guards, they just sneered and said they didn't care. People were denied essential medicine. I saw various people in their 60s, 70s and even 80s denied their essential medicine. People who had heart conditions, one guy who's HIV positive needed his meds, a guy who needed meds to avoid having seizures, which could potentially be fatal. And the guards said time after time to person after person, "We don't care. There's no medicine for animals," and so on, things like that. This is what they're willing to do to predominantly white Europeans, US passport holders, French passport holders, German passport, British. Imagine what they are willing to do to Palestinians if they're willing to do that to us.
Kieran, Israeli authorities say that the area you were in was an active combat zone, and they had warned that this would happen again if you. They warned that they would do this if you entered that area. Just tell us the purpose of why you were there. Israeli authorities are describing this as a publicity stunt.
Well, first of all, the Israelis make it up as they go along with regards to international law. I mean, it is very clear that if you intercept boats in international waters, you are violating first humanitarian law and maritime law. Second of all, territorial waters outside of Gaza under international legal frameworks, are not Israeli waters. They're waters that belong to a future Palestinian state under international law. So this was a double violation. What we were trying to do was very, very simple. It's not any more complex than this or any more invidious than this. We were trying to bring baby formula, food and medicine to people who have suffered the worst genocide of the 21st century, the people of Gaza. And it's incredible for Israel to cause such utter destruction in Gaza and then say, no, this is active combat zone, therefore you cannot enter it. As I say, that's completely fabricated. That's an artificial obstruction. What's real is international law. What's real is that we were intercepted in international waters, and we were doing it, as I say, to bring humanitarian aid to people who are being starved. 92% of buildings in Gaza are destroyed. All of the education facilities are destroyed. 50% of children in Gaza want to commit suicide. This is the context in which we were trying to bring, as I say, baby formula, food, basic medicines. And it's the context in which Israel, in order to prevent that from happening, because it really doesn't want anybody in Gaza to receive any of those basic things, Israel is willing to create an artificial obstruction and expects the world to buy it. It's transparent nonsense.
Okay. Kieran, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
And we approached Israeli authorities for comment about how the activists are treated, but they have not responded. Now, while all of that was happening, indirect talks between Israel and Hamas on the US peace plan began this afternoon in Egypt. Hamas said its negotiations will focus on the first stage of a ceasefire, but Palestinians are still being killed in Gaza. More than 40 people have been killed since Saturday. I've been speaking to UNICEF spokesperson James Elder, who gave me an update about the situation right now. Have a listen.
Yeah, Yalda, in the north in Gaza City, it's still a lot of panic. There's still been a lot of airstrikes, a lot of artillery. We think around 15 children have been killed just in the last 48, 72 hours. So consistent airstrikes, I don't know, consistent drones still above me. And a lot of people in the north are just making the point time and time again, Yalda, everyone you talk to, they don't have a choice. It's not that they don't want to go south, it's that they've got an elderly parent in a wheelchair or a son with an amputation. They don't have the money to go south. They know that the south is desperately overcrowded, dangerously overcrowded, and they know that there's airstrikes in the south. So people don't have options, and this kind of logic imposed on the people in Gaza City is both brutal and contradictory, because they know the south is very, very dangerous, and at the same time they can't get out from the north. So it's very, very important, I think, for them that people remember that irrespective of what happens in the next few days, they retain that status as civilians.
And they do continue to be asked, though, James, to move. And as you say, it is next to impossible. And also, they've been moving around over and over again over the course of the last couple of years.
Well, exactly. Most people who've been in Gaza City used the last of their funds to get to the south, maybe 5 months ago. And they ended up in the south, and they ended up where we are now, Al-Mawasi nearby, which, Yalda, is, one of the most densely populated cities on the planet. Those people moved down here. They saw that. They also saw airstrikes in so-called safe zones and shrapnel ripping through tents. They came down here. Then as soon as the ceasefire happened, Yalda, they went back. Even it meant putting up tents over rubble, as someone said to me, going through and finding a cup, finding a spoon. It was home. They don't have the resources. They don't have the energy to move again. It's not a choice for anyone right now.
James, you talk there about the number of children that were killed in the last 48 hours or so. Certainly since President Trump called for the airstrikes to end. But just talk us through some of the children you're meeting, you're seeing, you're posting some of their images. You've talked to me in the past about the malnutrition that they're suffering. What are you seeing right now?
Everywhere. It's everywhere you go. It's this war zone of a hospital. It's Yalda, being in a hospital where I was the very first day, and again walking over children. Just this incredible scream of people, of an elderly person. It's not just children, it's grandparents whose final days are spent, wilting away in the corner of a hospital without the heart tablets they need, without their grandchildren. So hospitals are horrific sights. I saw a little girl who'd just been pulled from the rubble and she was okay. Doctors got to her and there were no internal injuries, no broken bones, 5-year-old little girl. But she hadn't been told at that point that her mum and her sister had both been killed in that moment. I was in an ICU, a few minutes later, and there was a sweet little girl, Aya, there, but she was badly injured from an airstrike, Yalda, on her home. And I was just watching her because the doctor was explaining her situation. It was critical. But I was looking, she had the hair bob, really nice hair bobs. You could see the care and attention a loved one had given to her. Aya died in front of us, and this was just 10, 15 minutes. That's what I've shared with you in a hospital. These are not unique moments. This is ongoing. These are not rare events that I'm sharing with you, Yalda.
James, regardless of what happens over the next few days, over the next few weeks, it does feel like the trauma that the people there have suffered, young and old, will stay with them, and that will be a whole other task of assisting with the mental health and the mental health issues that people will suffer as part of the day after.
So every child psychologist or family member I talk to is desperate for it to end, but they worry about everyone here right now is in trauma. Once people start to process that, UNICEF does a lot of work around trauma, but at the same time, we do that trauma work, and then at nights, children go home into tents where the bombardments continue. But there's something real in the hope the Palestinians feel, and there's a bedrock here, Yalda, and it is based around education. It's not a cliche. The reason Gaza keeps bouncing back is because of something, and that is education. That's grandparents and parents. That's engineers and doctors and computer scientists and nurses. These people, this foundation, one of the world's highest literacy rates, makes this place a very special place. But education, like healthcare, like agriculture, like the economy, have been under a systematic attack. And I don't think anyone feels right now they can last another 6 months, much less 6 days. So everyone, despite what we now know were charades of peace talks in 2024, everyone is backing so much on getting some good news in the coming days.
That was UNICEF's James Elder speaking to me from Gaza in the last half an hour or so. In the last few days, President Trump has been incredibly firm and forceful with both Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas, demanding that both sides agree to his 20-point peace plan. In the last few minutes, he's been speaking at the Oval Office about the situation in Gaza and addressing some of the leaks that have been coming out, including the way in which he has been speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu, some of the comments he's been making about Benjamin Netanyahu, and also his hopes for the future of Gaza and the wider region. Let's just have a listen in.
Mr. President, there's negotiations happening with your team in Egypt right now over your proposed peace plan. It was reported by Axios over the weekend that you had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu where you told him to stop being so negative and to take the win when it came to Hamas's response to that. Is that true? And
no, it's not true. He's been very positive. He's been very positive on the deal. Everybody is. I think every nation is. We have just about every nation working on this deal and trying to get it done, something that you could say 3,000 years if you look at it in certain ways, or you could say centuries, but this is a deal that incredibly everyone just came together. They all came together. No, Israel's been great. They've all been good, Caitlin.
And in the negotiations, do you have any red lines in terms of Hamas disarming and whatnot? Are there
no, I have red lines. If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
That was President Trump addressing some of the questions from reporters, including that question about whether he said to Benjamin Netanyahu to stop being so negative. He said that he did not tell Netanyahu to stop being negative about this hostage deal. He also said that Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important. As we said, the two sides have begun indirect talks in Egypt this evening, and we will be following those developments. but you're watching The World. Still to come on the programme, we'll be taking you to Afghanistan, where an unprecedented hunger strike crisis is taking place, which has left millions malnourished. So what is the Taliban going to do about it? Join us for that.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with an aim, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people this is the politics hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous. No one does care about us. I'm really interested in that. On the politics hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. I'm Yalda Hakim, live here in Jerusalem. We're going to turn our attention to Afghanistan now, a country facing an unprecedented hunger crisis. Now, more than 4.7 million women and children require urgent treatment for malnutrition, according to the UN, while 90% of children are in food poverty. Sky News has been to the northeast of Afghanistan, where babies are dying because of limited access to food and life-saving medicine. Our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch reports.
A cacophony of cries. Babies clinging on to life. In Badakhshan's provincial hospital, you can see, feel, hear the distress. Mothers exhausted, holding vigil by beds. These are the children of Afghanistan, facing hunger on a scale the country has never seen before.
This one is complicated with severe acute malnutrition with pneumonia.
Faisal is 12 months old. He's severely malnourished. His mother has already lost 3 children to malnutrition.
I'm worried about him and what might come next. I have already lost 3 of my children. My first daughter died at 8 years old. 2 more of my children passed away when they were 2.5.
The ward is full of lost-looking eyes, dimmed with hunger. Bodies wrestling. Families hanging on to hope. Asma is 13 months old, but she weighs little over 9 pounds, less than half of what she should. After a very difficult night, Asma's put on oxygen and thankfully starts to improve.
I'm really afraid. Of course I'm afraid. I've cried so much. I'm so thankful to the doctors. They've kept my baby alive. I'm so grateful to them.
But there is a steady stream of other desperate cases.
There are currently 20 babies on this ward, and a new one arrives every day. 2 have turned up just in the time that we've been here, and some won't survive. In the last 3 months, roughly 1 baby has died every 3 days here.
Masouda's family travelled 13 hours to get here, spending what little they have left. Everyone is keeping a close eye on her tiny heart. Doctors fear she might not pull through.
The list of needed is very big.
They're doing all they can here, but the team tells us they need more staff, more medicine, more equipment. In rural areas, poverty is as extreme as the landscape, and help is getting harder to reach. There's been a huge cut in foreign aid, severe droughts, and now the Taliban government has restricted women's right to work and earn money.
Yes, they are to blame. Every girl had her own dreams. I wanted to be a doctor. I took my responsibility for my children seriously, and I wanted to support my husband too.
But the Taliban say the country is reeling from decades of conflict.
Do you accept, though, if more women could work and earn money, they'd find it a lot easier to feed their babies?
First of all, Afghanistan's social structure is such that most family economic responsibilities traditionally rest with men. A 5-year plan has already been announced to tackle malnutrition, unemployment and other pressing social issues, with concrete solutions being implemented across multiple sectors.
Under the Taliban, women can no longer train to be doctors and nurses. And in remote villages, community workers like Harira are often the only lifeline. She goes door to door, trying to teach families about nutrition and, when needed, get their children to clinics. It saved Ramzia's son's life.
His face was tiny. His legs and hands were as small as my fingers. Now he's much better.
I was afraid I would lose him. He was so weak. But Harira came here and helped me. She taught me how to feed him and give him milk when he needed. Then his health improved.
But keeping children alive in this climate is a battle. Nasrullah and Jamila's twins are just 2 months old. They're also in the throes of grief, on a journey to the grave of the baby they lost only a month ago. Her name was Shukriya. She was 18 months old.
She was our child. We loved her. I will never forget her, so long as I am alive. We really tried. We went to the doctor for checkups. for ultrasound, for blood works. We tried our very best, but none of it could save her.
Are you worried for the future of your twins?
Yes, I'm afraid the same thing will happen to my twins.
Deaths aren't documented in a lot of these communities, but locals tell us more and more children are dying because of malnutrition, a silent, searing loss that is spreading.
And Cordelia joins us live tonight from Kabul. Cordelia, powerful reporting there. And the truth of the matter is, when the international community, the United States, left Afghanistan 4 years ago, the sanctions they imposed on the Taliban has not just punished the Taliban, it's punished the 40 million Afghans who are bearing the brunt of this, with a harsh winter round the corner.
Yes, this is an incredibly pressing time, and they've already endured so much, and there's no doubt about it. The huge drop in aid has had a profound effect here. We've seen since the US pulled out, of course, once Afghanistan's largest donor, 422 health clinics have closed. And what we saw in our report there is staff that are working hard, but they do not have the equipment they need. They want more staff too, and they simply aren't getting it. Now, the US has said that Taliban corruption is the issue. That is why they aren't willing to bring more funding to Afghanistan. Also, other international donors have continued to say the restrictive policies on girls and women are a barrier for them. But there are some aid agencies calling on a more pragmatic approach. We've spoken to the UN here, and they have said if this funding shortfall continues, so too will preventable deaths. Now, it is not often that we hear from the senior Taliban leadership on this issue or any other, but we spoke to the chief spokesman, Zabiullah Mujahid, about malnutrition. But I started by asking him where, after 4 years, he thinks his government is.
For the past 4 years, Afghanistan has experienced relative peace and stability under a unified government. Security has improved, and there are visible signs of economic recovery and development efforts taking shape. These are encouraging achievements for our country. However, we still face considerable economic challenges. After 4 decades of continuous conflict, Afghanistan's recovery cannot be realised within just 4 years. Despite these difficulties, the current period represents an opportunity.
Recently, the internet was shut down for 48 hours across Afghanistan, a whole country unable to go online and to use their phones. We've had no official explanation for why that massive shutdown took place. Can you now explain what the reason was?
At present, we have not received any official communication from the Ministry of Telecommunications. Therefore, we are not in a position to comment on the matter. We will share our views once further details are provided.
Telecom firms in Afghanistan say that they were officially ordered to shut down services. Do you accept that? And did the order come from the Supreme Leader?
As I mentioned earlier, we will discuss this matter further once the Ministry of Telecommunications announces its policy.
When you came to power, you said you'd respect women's rights and that many of the restrictions that you placed on women and girls were temporary. We're 4 years down the line now. Girls over 12 still can't go to non-Islamic schools. Will they ever be allowed to, and if so, when?
Well, I cannot make any promises, as this matter falls under the responsibility of the Ministries of Education and of Higher Education. I'm not fully informed about the progress they have made towards resolving this issue. In general, our society faces a range of challenges that must be addressed based on priority. The Islamic Emirate has already taken certain measures regarding this, and we remain hopeful that an appropriate solution will be found in due course.
The economy of Afghanistan is in crisis. In our time here, we've seen many malnourished babies. Do you accept that your government needs to do more to tackle the problem?
The economic crisis affects not only children, but the entire population. This situation is the result of decades of conflict and 2 major invasions that devastated Afghanistan's infrastructure and economy. We have had to start from zero to rebuild and restore our national resources.
Now, Donald Trump recently made clear that he wants Bagram Air Base returned to the US. Is there any possibility that that will happen, and have there been any talks, any deals struck?
Afghans will never allow their land to be handed over to anyone under any circumstances. Afghanistan has been tested in the past, and we believe that the failed approaches of previous years should not be repeated.
Zabihullah Mujahid there. And Cordy, I've spoken to Zabihullah Mujahid a number of times, and he does a very good job of evading the questions, especially when it comes to girls' education or basic human rights. But he seemed to be quite firm when it came to what the intentions are around Bagram, you know, the fact that Donald Trump wants it back. He's saying that that's never going to happen.
Yeah, I think it was quite striking how emphatic, how explicit he was about Bagram Air Base, because in the weeks that we've been here in Afghanistan, there's been feverish speculation about a possible deal, some kind of diluted deal at very least. And yet you heard there he was very clear that the Taliban are not willing to hand over Bagram to the United States. We know Donald Trump has been vociferously pushing to, as he says, take it back, but there's no sign of that happening imminently. I think what we are seeing behind the scenes, though, are negotiations happening between the two. There is talk about embassies reopening in Kabul and in Washington, talk of trade as well, talk around aid and plugging some of the issues there. I think the Taliban is certainly preoccupied with recognition because, of course, only Russia has formally recognised the Taliban's leadership. The barrier around women and girls remains too high for too many, and concerns of corruption too. So we will see this week the foreign minister of the Taliban head to India. They are looking at pursuing relationships more deeply with Russia and with China too. But on that issue of girls' education and some of the restrictions we have seen increasingly placed on people, we're not seeing any major shift at all.
Nuclear.
Cordy, thank you so much tonight for all of your reporting out of Afghanistan. Now, let's just bring you some news developing. We showed you that press conference that President Donald Trump was having in the Oval Office in the last 20 minutes or so. There are some more lines that have come out from that. Donald Trump talked about some of the things that he was accused of saying to Benjamin Netanyahu, including whether he thought Benjamin Netanyahu was being negative. He denied that they'd had that conversation. He also said Hamas had been agreeing to things that are very important. Now, in the last few minutes, President Trump has said that he expects the Gaza deal to happen soon. He said things are making, that he thinks that they're making tremendous progress. Let's just have a listen to what he had to say.
I think we're going to have a deal. It's a hard thing for me to say that when for years and years they've been trying to have a deal with Gaza, but I mean, literally for centuries. Okay, if you really think about it. But we're going to have a Gaza deal, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Well, that was Donald Trump speaking a little earlier. We're also getting some news that he has spoken to the Turkish leader, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, this evening, and as well as the Jordanian King, King Abdullah, discussing the Gaza plan between the two. That's from the Jordanian royal court, saying Jordan's King Abdullah has discussed the Gaza plan with the US president. alongside that, Donald Trump has also said that there are strong signals from Iran that they'd like to see this deal done as well. So Donald Trump talking about a range of issues at that press conference, but we understand that he has spoken with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, as well as Jordan's King Abdullah. These are people and leaders he met in New York in the last couple of weeks discussing his 20-point plan. So they are keeping on top of this situation as well. We will continue to follow the situation. But let's focus now on the crisis elsewhere in France. The country's Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has quit less than a month after taking up the role. He's the fourth Prime Minister to stand down in the past year, and it's led to calls from the right-wing National Rally government for new elections. Just have a listen.
Je l'appelle à dissoudre l'Assemblée nationale.
I call on President Macron to dissolve the National Assembly because we have reached the end of the road and there is no solution. There will be no solution tomorrow, and therefore the only wise decision in these circumstances, as provided for by the Constitution of the Fifth Republic, is to return to the polls and let the French people decide the direction of the country.
Non mais là on est au bout de la blague là, je veux dire.
This joke has gone on long enough. The French people are fed up with this situation, and in this case, Emmanuel Macron.
Marine Le Pen there. Well, let's go straight to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle. And Ali, it's unbelievable that you and I were standing in Paris, I guess 27 days ago, when we saw the French government collapse and a new prime minister was appointed, and now this.
Yeah, I mean, who thought, Yalda, within under a month, well, certainly I would be back here in Paris. Same story again, fifth time this has happened in just over a couple of years for Emmanuel Macron. Marine Le Pen is not universally popular in France. Her popularity is growing, that's for sure. But I do think she is right. The French people are getting very frustrated about this, whichever side of the political spectrum they're on, because Macron cannot find someone who can break a deadlock that most people think is of his own making, because back in 2024 he called snap elections and he lost his parliamentary majority in the National Assembly. And ever since then, there's been a hung parliament. A hung parliament has brought deadlock, indecision, and every prime minister that has tried to push forward a new budget has failed. Sébastien Lecornu didn't even get that far really this time. He had his 26, 27 days to try and form a government. He said last night on Twitter that he had managed to achieve that, except it wasn't really very new. It was full of the same old faces, to such an extent the person he appointed as the Armed Forces Minister, the portfolio that he used to have, was Bruno Le Maire, who was the economy minister for about 7 years in France, and most people blame him for the economic predicament that France is now in. And so this new government that Lecornu had appointed turned on him rapidly, to the point where this morning, less than 24 hours after he said he had formed this new government, he was at the president's office saying he had to hand in his resignation. And then bizarrely, we heard this morning that the Élysée Palace, Macron, had accepted his resignation. And now this evening, the Élysée are saying, well, actually, they've sort of said to Lecornu, effectively, try and sort this out, see whether you can do anything to bring stability back to France, which I have to say seems like a rather sort of desperate move, a desperate plea by Emmanuel Macron to see whether or not there's anything salvageable in this prime ministership, this sort of infant prime ministership of Sébastien Lecornu. And if not, then what? Appoint another prime minister and face yet, another predicament? Go to the polls again with the National Assembly, lose his majority, or possibly even stand down himself. He's not going to stand down himself, I don't think, but it could be that he decides he's got no other option than to have National Assembly elections again.
Yeah, Emmanuel Macron between a rock and a hard place there. Ali, thanks so much. Well, we've been reporting from Jerusalem throughout the day, and lots of developments in the Middle East. Let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, who is here with me this evening in Jerusalem. Adam, so many lines coming out from the Oval Office tonight. There are so many people here holding their breath across the region, frankly. And we're seeing leader after leader call Donald Trump, speak to him to make sure that everyone stays focused and on course.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating sort of web of diplomacy that is going on at the moment. The first thing to say is Donald Trump is talking about thinking that there will be a Gaza deal. Now, let's temper that with the inevitability of saying that Donald Trump is always optimistic about this at the moment until the moment when he isn't. But he is saying that progress is being made. He says he wants the first phase done this week. And interestingly, he is praising Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, and that man appears to be becoming a crucial intermediary, talking with Hamas. Trump was saying how much Hamas respects Erdogan. At the same time, Benjamin Netanyahu today having a phone call with Vladimir Putin and talking about what is going on in Gaza. So this really is geopolitics on a grand scale. There are mediators there. So we have a first phase of this going on, Yalda. Interestingly, Netanyahu's big right-hand man is not yet involved in these negotiations, but it looks like Steve Witkoff is, and Jared Kushner, who brings this kind of business element of, I think he will be the man whispering in Trump's ear and saying, regardless of all the politics, the morality, this is what the business situation looks like. And it comes back to that gravitational pull. We know the Nobel Prize is being awarded on Friday. The families, the hostages forum have written a letter today endorsing Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. So the pieces feel as if they're coming together, but I think we always have to also say there is a long way to go in this negotiation because there are still some red lines. And I don't think right now anybody wants to address those. They want to look at the big, grand deal. They don't want to get into the granular details of who will run Gaza, how will Hamas be disarmed, what will Hamas's role be in the future, who will the prisoners be involved in the Palestinian side, and also the really thorny issue that clearly Hamas and the PIJ aren't sure where all the hostages are and whether they can get them all together. A lot of hurdles to cross, but it hasn't fallen down yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, thank you so much. And we'll be, as I said, watching the developments quite closely over the next few days. As Adam said, still a lot of hurdles, but we'll be observing, analysing and bringing you up to date. But for now, good night.